And that was part 1 of Captain Marvel. Stay tuned for the second part next week, where you get to handle the foam and more foam and utility belts. I love utility belts. They actually get to hold your stuff while you go cosplaying around, and it's not like one of those molded ones where they don't open and stuff. They're actual pockets, and I love it. All right, stay tuned for the second part next week. Bye. Alright, and now we're gonna work on the foam part of Captain Marvel. We've got the utility belt, her gloves, shoe armor. I just drew it out to be sure I know what I'm making, as always. And right here, since her belt does curve a little bit from the upper hip to the bottom hip, that means there's a curve in the foam. And right about here is where I'm gonna put the two pieces together. So right here I just have some contact cement, my scissors, I line them up like this. I'm gonna cut right through the foam. And that just makes it line up because when I cut, they're already lined up. So when I cut it, it's perfect, and I just put a little bit of contact cement on either side in a thin layer. And I wait until it gets tacky to the touch, so it's not liquidy at all. And then I put a second layer on, same procedure, a thin layer, and I make sure that it is very, very sticky to the touch. Like, it's almost gonna take my skin off sticky. And then I'm gonna carefully, very carefully put it together. When I mean careful, it is careful. You can only do this one time, one pass. So very carefully lining up the very edge and then using my finger to guide the rest of it up, making sure that it is as smooth as possible. There's always going to be a seam there, there's no getting around that. But I mean, it is such a small seam when you do it very carefully, and yeah, not very noticeable, especially when it's painted. And here's all of this. I have my line marks to where it needs to be. I put it around my waist, and that's where it ended up. And yeah, I just marked it off, cut it. No wait, I'm not gonna cut it. This is where the belt buckle is gonna be. Yeah. And right here, I have about how big I want the belt buckle, just slightly bigger than the band of the belt. And it's gonna be a circle. So that's about 3 inches, so it needs to be about 3 inches in a square-ish shape, and I'm just marking off the circle shape. If you have trouble with making circular shapes, go with a template or something that is circular, like a mug, or yeah. I happened to make this circle not wonky, and it was pretty good. So right here, since I have some really cheap craft foam and it's very thin, I'm just gonna layer it a little bit so that it has a little bit more sturdiness with the same craft foam and some contact cement. I'm just gonna layer this. I think I got this at Dollar Tree, I'm pretty sure. They have like those bulk little packages of really thin foam for $1. It's a good investment, especially in this sort of application where where I just need little foam details. The red foam for my belt, I think I got at Hobby Lobby. It's a bit thicker, and it's it's thicker. I didn't have quite enough for the belt buckle, and therefore I'm using the cheap foam for it. And I'm very carefully cutting this out after I glued it together. That way I don't have to cut out 2 pieces. Glue them together and have them both be not exactly the same. And just going around cleaning up the edges, because circles are never perfect. Just going about the best I can. And now I have my medallion. Right here I have the little symbol that she has on her belt. Cut that out of paper. I made it as symmetrical as I could, stuck it on, and now I have this stretchy 4-way gold fabric I found at Joann. I'm pretty sure it's the Ayahan version, the Ayahan fabric. It is very nice. And I'm just putting some contact cement all over the front and probably a little bit on the back, making sure that, again, it is a thin layer and that it is very tacky before sticking the two pieces together. I'm also going to glue the back of the fabric, and yep, you see it's a little dark, that's where I put the glue, and just smudging it on. It's sort of similar how you put fondant on a cake, just sort of going from the middle and smoothing it out from the middle towards the edges, and just pressing it in where it needs to be indented. I'm just going around the entire medallion, and I probably glued it after I did this part so it didn't stick to the paper. Man, that looks dope, right? And there's a little bit too much tension around some of the crevices. Those aren't going to stick completely, but overall it looks pretty good. Here's my medallion, I did the back. Right now I'm using some foam for my utility belt, and this is going to be for, I'm making my pouches right now. I have a little template of how big I want my pouch, about as big as my phone, wink wink, and I'm just taking the thick fabric, the thick foam, cutting up little pieces for the sides and a big piece for the center, and just gonna fold it over. You could make individual pieces for the front, back, and sides, and top and bottom, but that's a lot more work than I want to do. And if you do it from one piece, it does have a nice curved feel, but if I want to keep that curved feel, I need to make the side pieces curved as well, at least on the bottom, to follow the curve that it naturally turns into. And again, I'm going to use contact cement on the very edges of all of this foam, and I'm going to carefully stick them together like so. Putting the contact cement in, well, where it needs, along the contact points. That's the right word. See right here, I have all the glistening glue right there, and going to very carefully stick this together because, as I said before, it is a one-time, you can only try the glue one time or else it will pretty much, you have to do it again. Right here I have some sticky foam, or sticky Velcro, that I'm going to stick to the foam. You can get this at your local hardware store, craft store, in the place where they sell like enclosures like hook and eyes or snap-on buttons. They usually sell Velcro at the same place. And even though it is a sticky back Velcro, doesn't really stick very well, even though it says, oh, it can hold up to 15 pounds. No, it can't. So I am reinforcing this with more contact cement, just one layer, because it is already sticky. And I'm going to stick it where I need it to go on my little pouch to close it. These are very difficult to get off your fingers after you've messed with so much glue for the night. Just sort of get it off as best you can. And of course, wait until it's very tacky and very sticky, and then that means it's ready to be stuck to its destination. The actual contact of the two pieces is what activates the contact cement. I'm just going to put it on either side so when I open and close it, it won't flop open. I'm just marking where it needs to be on either side to make sure that that both sides are even. Putting a small dab here and here. It's okay to use marker. It's going to be covered with the Velcro anyways. and just stick it on. At this point, it doesn't really matter which side is the hooks and which side is the eyes, as long as the opposites are touching. And now it closes and opens, and it looks so utility belty. It's so awesome. I've heard that there are utility belts that are cast in one piece, and that they just, you know, pop out of the mold and they don't open. And I think that's just super dumb, because it's a utility belt. It needs utility. I finished all my pouches in the same manner, in different sizes and shapes. Here, oh, I need to attach the belt buckle now. And I just centered it on where it needs to go. I marked it off. I put the belt on, made sure that it all fits very nicely, and this is how it looks like. And finishing touches, I took some of the shiny gold fabric that I used to cover the belt buckle, and I cut some up, and this is going to be the little enclosure that is seen in the comic. And here's the hardest part of this outfit, is the shoe armor. It's just an eyeballing thing. I took some foam, I put it on my foot, I marked out where the armor should be. If the foam wasn't there, then I would mark it around my foot, but I'm putting the foam there, so when it goes on, and I mark it as such, it will look like foam shoe armor. Well, hopefully it should just look like shoe armor. And carefully cutting this out. It's always a good idea to cut it a little bit over the lines that you drew, just in case if it happens to be a little bit small. And I'm cutting to fit the shape of the shoe, so when I glue it to the shoe, it will lay flat, and hopefully it won't be, you know, bulky or wonky looking. And just putting it on the opposite side of the shoe, just to see if it's the same, because your foot is different on either side. And of course I need the top part of the armor. This shoe is very interesting. It only has red, well, I'm sure the whole foot is armored, but it only has red pieces in strategic locations. The toe of the shoe is blue, and the heel is blue or black. Not really sure, but there's only a few pieces red on it, which I thought looked cool. And once again with the glue, gluing I'm just gluing one side with the foam side, and I'm sticking it on like a stamp onto my shoe. So I know where to lay the glue down very precisely. And I spill a little, that's okay. It's a dark fabric. Oh, by the way, this was leftover fabric from a Superman outfit that I made, and it was much brighter. It was a nice bright cobalt blue. And I dyed it with a black fabric dye, a RIT fabric dye, for, I don't know, like 30 minutes. It turned out like this. I think I used like half a bottle of RIT fabric dye, and thankfully it didn't turn out black. It got to a nice dark navy blue. It's funny, it looks a lot different on camera and off camera and indoors and outdoors. It's a very versatile color, I guess. And I'm just doing the gluing on all of the pieces, but I'm keeping the top of this unglued. So when I move my ankle, I still have movement, and it can move around with me. And now that I have all of those pieces together, I'm just gonna finish this off with the last pieces that go in between. Because if I make all of these pieces before I put it on my foot, there's a chance they might not line up. So I saved these in-between pieces for last, so I can make them last and make them correct the first time. Using the same techniques, I cut them out, I glue them on. Probably going to use this piece for the other side because it has Sharpie all over it. Oh no, wait. I think I paint all of this because this is an orangey red, and I want it to be a nice dark red. Or at least a darker red. Or at least more red. It's too blood orange. And here it is, my foot armor. It's not finished yet, but we're gonna do some nifty things to it. First off, I'm gonna paint it with, this is just cheap acrylic paint. It's probably like 50 cents at Walmart. And just covering the entire shoe in it. Well, not the entire shoe, the foam part. I think it took maybe 2 or 3 layers to actually cover the Sharpie. And here's the finishing touch. Well, you can still see Sharpie, but that's okay. I have puffy paint, or puff paint, or 3D paint if you so please. This helps cover a little crack that you can see is covered up now. And it is a raised paint. It doesn't, it's not necessarily, well, you can paint with it, but when you get it out of the bottle, it makes this little line, sort of like a tube of paint that doesn't fall or melt or anything, and it just finishes up my scenes very nicely. It looks very cartoony. It has that really bold finish that I'm looking for, and it takes a while to dry. So just be warned, this particular one I used a metallic black. It's got a silvery finish to it, but it's also really dark, and I like that. It looks very movie-esque, I guess, instead of being just black or just silver. It's got that subtle metallic look. It reminds me of the movie editions of superhero outfits, and it's this one in particular takes about 45 minutes to dry. I can very well tell you that I use this a lot. I use that entire bottle. Most of it went on Spider-Man. Actually, like, most of it went on Spider-Man. Not very much went into anything else. And I had to do all of the Spider-Man while I was wearing it, or most of it while I was wearing it, so I knew exactly how long it took to dry. And going back with the red paint to touch up any of those little smudges that I may have had once the puffy paint is dried. By the way, puffy paint has a great elasticity the first couple of days after it's applied, but after that it loses some of the elasticity. It completely dries and it is not as stretchy. It does stretch, but it will crack. But when it's done stretching and when it snaps back, it will take its form again. Right here, I just have a cutout of my hand. I'm going over my fabric with a marker, using my hand as a stencil. And this is a four-way stretch fabric I also got from Joanne. I'm just gonna go over the entire hand while, well, I didn't cut the entire hand out. That's very important. I cut it after I sewed it. And right here I have the cuff of the glove. And this is just big enough for my hand to go through, and big enough so that it looks cartoony, and yeah, so that it looks like the comic book. This will vary depending on how big your hand is and how big you want the actual cuff. Right here I marked it again where I needed it to end, and right here I'm gonna cover it in the same fabric so that it looks the same. There we go. I'm just going to sew along this line right here where the foam should stop. I'm pretty sure... No, wait, did I sew it on? I think I sewed it on first. I think I sewed it to the glove and then I put the foam in. Yeah, it looks like that happened. Yeah, just pinning it all together, making sure it stretches enough for my hand to go through. That's very important. And when it stretches like this and snaps back, it follows, well, it looks like, well, it's not baggy, which is very important in this application. And since the cuff is so much bigger than the handhole in the glove, I need to stretch the glove part as I'm sewing it and making sure that, well, it's even, because if I just sew it regularly, then there's going to be so much more of the cuff part rather than, well, the cuff part will be in excess. So I'm stretching it, so you get it. And there we go. Put my hand in it and everything. By the way, I used the stretch stitch on my sewing machine, and oh yeah, right here. I'm just snuggling this little piece of foam in here. And I'm pretty sure I just glued the top of that on with contact cement. Ben's clapping in the background. Thank you! Thank you! And right here I just have little, the little detail of, there's a little rectangle of gold on her hand. So I used some contact cement and I just glued that sucker down, putting glue on both sides, making sure it's tacky, and putting it on very carefully. And here I have the complete bodysuit with the star and all of the details. I need to puffy paint this monstrous puffy paint of straight lines and death. I highly recommend that you test puffy paint on something first before you actually puffy paint to make sure you know you can handle and make straight lines beforehand. Right here I messed up. Right here I messed up. My line was not straight, and I used 99% alcohol to try and get it off. The result was, you can see a darkened line, so I actually painted over the entire front part of the chest with a red that I thought would match. It actually ended up just a slightly darker red than the rest of it, but it looked fine. If you like this tutorial, give us a like, comment down below what else you want me to make. I do take recommendations. Actually Wasp was a recommendation from one of my high school friends. Go figure. And also check us out on Twitch. We are moving a lot of stuff towards Twitch and hoping to get a little bit of Twitch action over there, but again, check out Cosplay Senpais, where me and Charlie, Unicorn Charlie, will give lots of cosplay sort of advice and whatnot. Check out the MOFO show and everything else that Wasp Nest has covered show-wise, our live streams on Facebook, and now on Twitch. Thanks, bye!